Hey guys, welcome back. So what we are going to do today is jump straight into Act 2 of Romeo and Juliet. This video is going to cover all of Act 2. It's probably going to be the shortest video just because we're not going to spend too much time on the different parts of Act 2. There are a lot of scenes that we're just going to skip over just because it's not as necessary for our understanding of what's going on in the play. But Act 2 does hold one of the most famous scenes, which we can call our balcony scene. And so we want to make sure that we are reading that and engaging with that part of the text. Before we move on to other parts. So just a little bit of a recap from what we learned in Act 1 of Romeo and Juliet. We're introduced to Romeo. He's a super sad boy. We're introduced to Juliet. She's being told by her mother that she has to get married to Paris. And then Romeo goes to this party, the Capulet party. At this point, we know that the Montagues and the Capulets don't like each other. They're enemies. And so he goes to the Capulet party with Mercutio and Benvolio. Benvolio is his cousin, Mercutio is his friend. And they are the party he catches the eye of Juliet. At this point, Romeo is super sad because he loves Rosalind, and Rosalind doesn't love him back. But he loves Juliet, or he falls in love with Juliet immediately at this party. And so he gets over Rosalind, which is what we're going to see right here in this prologue of Act 2. I'm kind of talking, the chorus kind of talking about that. But he dances or does this really weird kissing hand situation with Juliet. And then Juliet falls in love with him. He falls in love with Juliet. It happens very quickly. And then they come to the realization that they belong to the Montagues and the Capulets. They're supposed to hate each other and not fall in love. And that's where Act 2 is going to pick up. Remember, this is a play. This is happening on a stage. I want you to keep that in mind as we are watching or we are reading this part of the text that is happening on a stage. Okay. At the end of Acts 1 and 2, I'm actually going to post a link to a YouTube file for one of the movies of Romeo and Juliet with some timestamps if you want to watch the movie. You're also going to have a quiz after Act 1 and 2. It's going to be posted today. It's not going to be due until tomorrow, but it is through the vocabulary and all the terms you learn in Shakespeare's introduction and some questions, some short answer questions about Acts 1 and 2 of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do this first part the exact same way that we did Act 1's prologue. Remember, the prologue happens because the chorus is on the stage. They are kind of giving us this narration for what's going to happen next. They're kind of filling in the blanks, and we are going to fill that in together as well. So you're going to be doing this along with me. I'm doing it in red in the Modern English column as we translate what is happening here with this prologue. Okay. Now old Desire doth in his deathbed lie. What this means basically is that Romeo's old love for Rosalind is now dead. I can spell it. Is now dead. And young affection gapes to be his heir. So what this means is that his new love for Juliet is forefront. So the heir to his old love that is now dead is this new love for Juliet. So he's not very sad anymore because he has found this new love for Juliet. The fair for which love groaned for and would die, with tender Juliet matched, is now not fair. So the love that once made Romeo so sad is nothing compared to the love for Juliet. Now Romeo is beloved and loves again. Beloved and loves again means that Romeo loves someone and that someone loves him back, which is something we haven't seen before. So that's good news for Romeo. Someone loves him finally. Alike bewitched by the charm of looks. So turn it to red. They were both entranced by looks. So they have just fallen in love with the fact that both of them are hot. That's basically the only thing that they know so far. They don't even really know anything about each other at all. They just see this person across the room and they're like, that person's hot, and then they fall in love. But to his for suppose he must complain. So he falls in love with someone who is supposed to be his enemy. And she still loves sweet bait from fearful hooks. She falls in love with someone she is supposed to be afraid of. Being held a foe, he may not have access to breathe such vows as lovers used to swear. So, being her enemy. We'll say being her enemy, even though he's really not her enemy, but he's supposed to be her enemy. Being her enemy, he does not have access to her so that he can tell her how much he loves her. And she, as much in love, her means much less to meet her newly beloved anywhere. So she is also in love with him, but has even less chance to meet up with him because she's basically trapped in this house, in the Capulet house. But passion lends them power. Time means to meet, tempering extremities with extreme sweet. But they love each other so much that they will find a way. And all of the danger and suffering will be made sweet because they are together. So that is what we are going to see in Act 2. This is this prologue. Remember, this is also going to be this sonnet, Shakespearean sonnet, that 14 lines with the quatrains followed by the couplet at the end. So if you want to take a look at that, you can, but that's not super important to what we're talking about today. Okay, so Act 2, Scene 1, we are not going to be reading. Act 2, Scene 1 sees Romeo in a trance about Juliet. He's wandering around in a garden, which we're going to find out is actually belongs to the Capulet house. He has fallen so in love with her after literally one meeting that he doesn't want to talk to anyone and instead only wants to talk to her. So Scene 1 sees Romeo hiding in a bush from Mercutio and Benvolio. Remember his cousin and his friend. They're looking for him. They think that he's still in love with Rosalind, and they think that's the reason why they cannot find him, because he's somewhere moping about her. Instead, he's actually just hiding behind a bush in the Capulet garden, trying to get some kind of note, or trying to catch Juliet's notice or even see Juliet. So Act 2, Scene 2 is arguably one of the most famous scenes from Romeo and Juliet. It's actually one of the most famous Shakespearean scenes. It consists of Romeo, low-key stalking Juliet by standing under her balcony and listening to what she's saying. So we're going to look at that scene now. Remember, he is in her garden and he sees her come out onto her balcony. And unlike a normal person, he doesn't walk away. He says, I'm going to hide down here and pretend that I'm not here so I can hear whatever she has to say to me. Okay. So we will go ahead and get started. We are going to pick up where it says Juliet appears in a window above. I'm going to read to you right now with the Shakespearean English, just for the start of this scene, just because it is the most famous scene, and I always read this one in Shakespearean English because I want you to read it in the Shakespearean English. If you want to follow along with the modern English on the other side, that's why it's there, so that you have that translation and it can help you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. But soft! What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. So, this is Romeo. Juliet walks out, and he says, But soft! What light through yonder window breaks? This is him just basically looking around. He goes, What is that light? And he looks up, he sees Juliet, and then he compares Juliet to the sun. Juliet is that light that is coming out in the middle of the night. So his whole world is being lit up because he sees Juliet now. That's an example of a metaphor. If you're writing and annotating with me, I would recommend noting that. But that is a metaphor here. He is comparing Juliet to the sun. And then he says, Arise, fair sun, kill this envious moon. That she is the most important light in the night right now. She's even fairer than the moon. She's better than the moon at this point. So right now he's kind of just saying all these things about how much he's in love with her. At this point, Juliet does not notice that he is there. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. So again, he's just still talking to himself here. This is an example of a soliloquy. Remember, no one else on the stage is listening to what he is saying. That would be a monologue if someone's listening to him. This is a soliloquy. He's putting his thoughts out into the world, not expecting anyone to hear, but obviously us in the audience do hear that. So he's saying, Oh, it's my love. I wish she knew she was my love. I wish I could tell her. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses, I will answer it. I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all of heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. So he says, Do I say something? Do I be that bold? And he goes, Nah, I'm not that bold. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit here and listen to her. And Juliet is just on her balcony, staring up at the sky, completely unaware that Romeo is under her, listening to her. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Her eye in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing, and I think it were not right. Were not night, sorry. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. So he's this kind of romantic here at the end. He says that I wish that I were a glove on her hand just so I can touch her face. At this point, he's envious of this hand. He's envious of the fact that she gets to touch her own face because that's all he wants to do. So we're seeing super lovey boy with Romeo here. He's moved from this really sad figure to this person who is so deeply in love, and it's romantic with Juliet. Okay, so now we're going to get Juliet responding to Romeo. She doesn't really, kind of this playback on what Romeo said. She's also going to be talking about her love for him, but again, she still does not know that he is there, so she is not directly speaking to him. Juliet says, "I, me." And then Romeo says, "She speaks! Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night being o'er my head as a winged messenger of heaven unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze upon him when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air." So what he is saying here is that he's comparing her to an angel. So this is going to be that simile because it's using the word as, like, or as is a simile, comparing her to this angel through the sky, because she has now said something. He is still deeply entranced with her. At this point, he has compared her to the sun, and now he is comparing her to an angel. And now Juliet is going to air whatever she's thinking about. She's going to have like her mini soliloquy as well. "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I will no longer be a Capulet." So, what Juliet is saying here, again, it's to herself, it's to the world, it's not towards another character, it's not towards Romeo. She's saying, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" The wherefore does not mean, "Where are you, Romeo?" She's not looking for Romeo at this part. She's saying, "Why are you Romeo?" It doesn't really make that much sense, but when you look into it, she's saying, "Why are you a Montague? Why are you the person you are? Because I wish I could just fall in love with someone easy. I wish I could fall in love with Paris because then I can get married to him, but I've fallen in love with my enemy. So why do you have to be that? Why do you have to be my enemy? Why are you Romeo?" And she says, "Deny thy father and refuse thy name." She's saying here that she wants him to say, "Okay, I'll no longer be a Montague. I will deny my family, and I will just fall in love with Juliet." And then she says, "And if you will not do that, if you will not deny your name, if you will not say that you're not a Montague, I will say I'm not a Capulet. I will leave my family. I will deny my father's name." So she has this kind of dramatic here too. At the start, she seemed kind of logical. Juliet, whenever she was talking to her mom about getting married, she was like, "I'll go look. I won't promise you anything." But now she's like, "I'm in love. I'm going to deny my father. Also, probably deny all the money he has, just so I can marry this Montague guy that I think is hot that I saw once at a party." So Romeo at this point says to himself, this is an aside. You see here, it's a small thing to the audience. He's talking to the audience here. "Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?" So basically what he's asking himself is, should I keep listening to her like a stalker, or should I at this point let her know I'm here so she stops revealing her thoughts like a diary? And he decides to keep listening because that's good old Romeo. And Juliet says, "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague." What's Montague? It's not a hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other word would smell is sweet? So basically what she's saying here is, why does it matter that you're a Montague? You're your own person. You're Romeo. Why does it matter that your last name is Montague? Why do I have to hate you? Because I don't hate you. I love you. So what she's saying here is, and she compares this to this situation with a rose. If we took a flower, if we took a rose and we smelled it, and then we were like, "I'm going to call this something other than a rose," and gave it maybe like a horrible name like trash. This is trash. This is no longer rose. This is trash. And then you smell it, it's still going to smell the same. It's the same flower. So she's basically saying here, what's so important about a name? Why do we name things? Why am I putting so much meaning into the fact that your last name is Montague? So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. "Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name that which is no part of thee, take all myself." So what she's saying to him is, or what she's saying here to herself, basically, is that if Romeo ditched the Montague part of his name, he wouldn't change. He'd still be as fair. He'd still be as perfect. And she's saying to him here, or saying to the universe, "Please, Romeo, deny thy name, get rid of your name, and then take me as your wife so that we can be in love without any kind of problems. At this point, Romeo decides to burst out from behind the bush and go, I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth, I never will be Romeo. So what he's saying here is, yes, yes, pick me, pick me, pick me. And he runs forward and he says, yes, I'm ditching Montague. I don't care about that name. I only care about you. And he's saying, I will never be known as Romeo from this point on. I only want to be known as your love. And Juliet says, what man art thou that thus bescreened in night so stumblest on my counsel? So she has no idea he's Romeo. She's like, who are you? Is there a man speaking in my garden? And Romeo says, by a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself, because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word. So what he is saying is, I don't even want to speak my name because it is your enemy. If I had written it down, I would rip it up because that's how much I do not care about this name. I do not want this name. And Juliet at this point comes to the realization that it's him and says, my ears have not yet drunk 100 words of that tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague? Romeo responds, neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike. So Juliet says to him, are you not Romeo? I can pretty much tell that it's you because I've heard your voice before, and I'm so obsessed with you that I remember what you sound like. And she says, are you not Romeo and a Montague? And he says, if you don't like either of those, if you don't like Romeo or you don't like the fact that I'm a Montague, I'm neither of them. You just pretend I'm someone different. Juliet says, how camest thou hither? Tell me, and wherefore? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art, if any of my kinsmen find thee here. And so what she's saying is, how did you get into my garden? The walls are really high, and if you get caught, you're straight up going to get killed because you're a Montague and the Capulets hate you. So you are being risky. Romeo responds, with love's light wings did I o'erperch these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out. And what love can do that dares love attempt, therefore thy kinsmen are no stop to me. So what he is saying is that I flew over these with love, the walls with love. So Romeo is being ridiculous. If someone says that to you, walk away from them. So he is not really answering their questions. He just says, I'm so in love with you that I came over the walls. And I don't care. I'm so in love. I don't care if they catch me and try to kill me. And Juliet says, if they do see thee, they will murder thee. Romeo says, alack, there lies more peril in thine eye than 20 of their swords. Look thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity. So what he is saying here is that I don't care about their swords. I only care about the way you look at me. And Juliet says, I would not for the world. They say they saw, they hear. And so she says, I don't want them to actually see you here. Please, I would give anything. And then Romeo says, I have a night's cloak to hide me from thine eyes, and but thou love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death procured waiting of thy love. Juliet says, but whose direction foundest thou out this place? Romeo says, by love, that first did prompt me to inquire. He lent me counsel, and I lent him eyes. I am no pilot, yet wert thou as far as that vast shore, washed with the farthest sea, I would adventure for such merchandise. So again, he's kind of just saying, I got here because of love. Love is the thing that showed me how to get to you, and I found you because I'm so in love with you. Okay, that's where we're going to stop with the Shakespearean English. I'm going to jump over to the modern English now, just because we are through the most important part of the balcony scene. Make sure that you are very familiar with what we just read, and that you know what just happened. If you need to go back and read it through the modern English, please do that. It's just because you are going to be quizzed specifically on that part of the scene. It's very important. So Juliet responds and says, you can't see my face because it's dark out. Otherwise, you'd see me blushing about the things you've heard me say tonight. I would be happy to keep up good manners and deny the things I said, but forget about good manners. Do you love me? I know you'll say yes, and I'll believe you, but if you swear you love me, you might turn out to be lying. They say Jove laughs when lovers lie to each other. Again, that reference, that allusion to Greek mythology there. Oh, Romeo, if thou really love me, say it truly. Or if you think it's too easy and too quick to win my heart, I'll frown and play hard to get, as long as that will make you try to win me, but otherwise I wouldn't act that way for anything. In truth, handsome Montague, I like you too much, and so you may think my behavior is loose, but trust me, gentlemen, I'll prove myself more faithful than girls who act coy and play hard to get. I should have been more standoffish, I confess, but thou overheard me talking about the love in my heart when I didn't know you were there. So excuse me, and do not assume that because you made me love you so easily, my love isn't serious. So Juliet kind of goes on this monologue, kind of small monologue, to Romeo here, saying, I'm like really embarrassed you heard me say those things and that I kind of didn't play hard to get at all. And I'm like super deep in love with you, but please don't think that's because like I'm not really serious about you or that I do this a lot because I don't. I'm just truly that much in love with you, and I want you to know that. And she says, if you want me to play standoffish, we can play that game. I can play hard to get. But you already know at this point that I'm in love with you, so why not just skip to that? And Romeo responds, Lady, I swear by the sacred moon above, the moon that paints the tops of fruit trees with silver. Julie says, Don't swear by the moon. The moon is always changing. Every month its position in the sky shifts. I don't want you to turn out to be that inconsistent too. So what he is saying is, I'll swear by the moon that I love you. And Juliet says, No, the moon is inconsistent. It changes. It waxes, it wanes all the time. So please swear by something more permanent. Romeo says, What should I swear by? Juliet says, Don't swear at all. But if you have to swear, swear by your wonderful self, which is the God I worship like an idol, and then I'll believe you. So what she says is, please swear by yourself because you're a God and I love you. And all of this because she thinks he's hot and she has fallen in love with him. That he is this handsome Montague. And Romeo says, if my heart's dear love, and Juliet interrupts, well, don't swear. Although you bring me joy, I can't take joy in this exchange of promises tonight. It's too crazy. We haven't done enough thinking. It's too sudden. It's too much like lightning, which flashes and then disappears before you can say, it's lightning. My sweet good night, our love, which right now is like a flower bud in the summer air, may turn out to be a beautiful flower by the next time we meet. I hope you enjoy the same sweet peace and rest I feel in my heart. So Juliet interrupts him and says, okay, we're going too fast. Like this is too much. We can't do this right now. It'd be ignorant of us if we felt we did this too quickly. And then Romeo says, "Oh, are you going to leave me so unsatisfied?" And Juliet says, "What satisfaction could you possibly have tonight?" Romeo says, "I would be satisfied if we made each other true promises of love." And Juliet says, "I pledged my love to you before you asked me to. Yet I wish I could take that promise back. So I had to give it again." Romeo responds, "You would take it back? Why would you do that, my love?" Juliet says, only to be generous and give it to you once more. But I'm wishing for something I already have. My generosity to you is as limitless as the sea, and my love is as deep. The more love I give you, the more I have. Both loves are infinite. The nurse calls Juliet from off stage. I hear a noise inside. Dear love, goodbye. Just a minute, good nurse. Sweet Montague, be true. Stay here for a moment. I'll come back. So Juliet exits to go talk to the nurse. And then Romeo is left alone to have this little mini soliloquy to himself. He's super happy at this point. Oh, blessed, blessed night. Because it's dark out, I'm afraid all of this is just a dream. Too sweet to be real. Juliet enters on her balcony. Juliet says, 3 words, dear Romeo, and then it's good night for real. If your intentions as a lover are truly honorable and you want to marry me, send me word tomorrow. So again, they're already talking about marriage. They don't know each other. They think they're hot. And then now they're going to get married. I'll send a messenger to you and you can pass on a message telling me where and when we will be married. I'll lay all my fortunes at your feet and follow you, my lord, all over the world. The nurse calls again from off stage. Madam, Juliet says to the nurse, I'll be right there to Romeo, but if you don't have honorable intentions, I beg you. The nurse again calls for Juliet. Juliet responds, All right, I'm coming. I beg you to stop trying me and leave me to my sadness. Tomorrow I'll send the messenger. Romeo says, My soul depends on it. And Juliet says, 1,000 times, good night. Juliet exits. And Romeo to himself says, Leaving you is 1,000 times worse than being near you. A lover goes towards his beloved as enthusiastically as a schoolboy leaving his books. But when he leaves his girlfriend, he feels as miserable as a schoolboy on his way to school. Romeo starts to leave. Juliet comes back out. It's like the hang up the phone thing. Like, no, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. But now Juliet's back on the balcony. She literally will not leave him. Juliet says, Romeo, oh, I wish I could make a falconer's call so I could bring my little falcon back again. I'm trapped in my family's house, so I must be quiet. Otherwise, I would rip open the cave where Echo sleeps. I would make her repeat his name until her voice grew more hoarse than mine by repeating, My Romeo. Romeo responds, My soul is calling out my name. The sound of lovers calling each other's names through the night is silver sweet. It is the sweetest sound a lover ever hears. Juliet again says, Romeo. And Romeo says, My baby hawk. Really cringe, hate it. And Juliet says, What time tomorrow should I send a messenger to you? And Romeo says, By 9 o'clock. Juliet says, I won't fail. From now until then seems like 20 years. I've forgotten why I called you back. And Romeo says, Let me stand here until you remember your reason. Juliet says, I'll forget it, and you'll have to stand there forever. I'll only remember how much I love your company. I'll keep standing here, even if you keep forgetting. I'll forget that I have any home besides this spot right here. And Juliet says, It's almost morning. I want to make you go, but I'd only let you go as far as a spoiled child lets his pet bird go. He lets the bird hop a little from his hand and then yanks him back by a string. And Romeo says, I wish I was your bird. And Juliet says, my sweet, so do I, but I would kill you by petting you too much. Good night, good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I'll say good night until tonight becomes tomorrow. Juliet exits. So again, that's another famous line from Juliet. They're looking at it in the Shakespearean English. Good night, good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow. And so basically what she's saying here that being apart from him is now this thing she has to struggle with, this sorrow. That sweet sorrow, that phrase there being an oxymoron, putting the word sweet and sorrow together, you technically don't expect them to go together normally. Juliet exits. Romeo has this last little part of his soliloquy. I hope you sleep peacefully. I wish I were asleep in peace so I could spend the night with you. Now I'll go see my priest to ask for his help and tell him about my good luck. And he exits. So Romeo and Juliet have professed their love for each other and have agreed to get married. I know it's fast, but plot elements need to happen quickly in Shakespeare's plays. Remember, the audience has seen this play when it was originally performed, needed to be interested. So things would move very quickly. You can't spend an entire play of Juliet and Romeo not being together. The play is Romeo and Juliet. They have to be together. So it has to happen quickly. So I'm going to give you a little synopsis of the next four scenes, in Act 2, just because we're not going to spend so much time reading them. In Act 2, Scene 3, Romeo talks to Friar Lawrence, a friar that is very similar to a priest. Friar Lawrence is a very important character. We're going to see him basically act as this friend to Romeo and Juliet, the guy who helps him out, who after much discussion agrees to help Romeo and Juliet get married. He tells Romeo that he should return to him that afternoon with Juliet in order to get married. In Act 2, Scene 4, Romeo is reunited with Mercutio and Benvolio. Juliet's nurse visits them and Romeo tells her to get Juliet to Friar Lawrence's room at the church so they can get married. The nurse agrees and returns to tell Juliet the news. In Act 2, Scene 5, Juliet is waiting on the nurse to return with the news. The nurse returns and annoys Juliet by not telling her what happened quick enough. And the nurse finally tells her what happened and Juliet is over the moon. And in Act 2, Scene 6, Juliet goes to Friar Lawrence's room and she gets married to Romeo. They don't actually show us that marriage, nor do they ever really show us any really intense fight scenes in Shakespeare's plays, just because that happens off stage. Maybe because they didn't want to offend people in the audience, who knows. But in these 4 acts or 4 scenes, Romeo goes to talk to Friar Lawrence. Friar Lawrence agrees to get them married. Romeo conveys that message to the nurse. The nurse tells Juliet. Juliet's super happy. She goes to Friar Lawrence's cell, and then Romeo and Juliet are married. And we are only in Act 2. So we have 3 more acts that are coming up that we're going to see Romeo and Juliet actually have to deal with. In fact, they're married, and we're going to see some heavy drama in Act 3, because Act 3 is technically our climax of the play. Remember that structure: exposition, rise in action, climax, fall in action, resolution. Okay, that's it for today, guys. Make sure you complete all your other assignments in Google Classroom for today. Thanks for watching.